I had just lived through the worst nightmare of my life. The HOA president slapped me with a fine she claimed could climb to nearly $1 million. Her justification, my wheelchair ramp. She said she was simply enforcing procedure. The irony was rich because that same day, the only legal document that mattered was the court order resting on my lap, dissolving her board of power. But let me back up. My name is Hank Mercer. My legs don't cooperate, but my mind does. And it's not just any mind, it's an engineer's. Engineers see the world as a series of problems waiting for clever solutions. For the last 5 years, my biggest problem has been my body. My solution, this chair, this van, and the house my grandfather left me. It was a good life, quiet, steady. I had my golden retriever, Daisy. I had my workshop projects. I had balance. Then came the disruption. Her name was Karen George. She'd just been elected HOA president, and she didn't care for the way I solved my challenges. What she saw as violations, I saw as survival. And she was about to learn what happens when you shove an engineer's world off balance. We don't rage. We calculate. It began with a single envelope, crisp, white, tucked beneath the wiper blade of my van at Tuesday morning. The sky was clear, birds sang, and Daisy's tail thumped softly against the grass by my ramp as she waited for me to finish my coffee on the porch. Life was calm until I rolled down my ramp to grab that letter. The ramp was my own designer craft-grade aluminum, perfect incline, non-slip grooves, motion lights that triggered at dusk, stronger than the building code required, because I had run the numbers myself. It wasn't just a ramp, it was freedom. To me, it was a bridge. To Karen George, according to that letter, it was an unauthorized architectural alteration. Fine, $500. She dressed it up with legal buzzwords: conditions, covenants, restrictions, aesthetic uniformity. And at the bottom her signature, with a flourish. Karen George, President. The threat sheet claimed these fines could pile up into 7 figures. Fear was the weapon, not legality. I stared at my ramp, polished, clean, functional. No more offensive than a neighbor's brick steps. State law and the ADA were crystal clear. Blocking access is discrimination. Daisy pressed her nose against my palm, sensing my tension. It's just a glitch in the system, I whispered, scratching her ears. I opened a new folder on my computer, labeled it H. Then came documentation. Photos from every angle. Tape measure visible for scale. Every bolt accounted for. Step 1 complete. 2 days later, another notice arrived, taped to my door, this time about my van. Big boxy, maybe not pretty but brilliant engineering inside. Lowered floor, hydraulic ramp, hand controls tuned like aircraft gear. To use it safely, I needed clearance. My driveway was the only space that worked. Her claim, parking a commercial-style vehicle in plain view, was against policy. The photo she attached cropped out the disabled plates. A neat little trick, another $500. But state protections for accessible vehicles are untouchable. I logged the letter, added fresh photos, and filmed the ramp deploying to show exactly why my driveway mattered. For good measure, I pulled county records to confirm. Property lines, I was squarely within my rights. This wasn't about enforcement, it was personal. That night I called my grandfather. He'd bought this place half a century ago, before the HOA even existed. He listened quietly, then said in his gravelly voice, "Some folks, you hand them a bit of power. It's like giving a hammer to a toddler. They just smash to see what breaks. Don't let her smash you. Build smarter. Engineers don't smash. We design. By Monday, envelope number 3 landed. This one made the pattern clear. Months back, after a rash of burglaries, I installed a discrete security system. One element was a thin, buried alarm wire hidden under mulch, low voltage, fully permitted, signed off by the city inspector. No shocks, just sound, completely legal. Her accusation: an unauthorized fence and potential hazard. Another $500 in a week. The total hit $1,500. This wasn't random nitpicking. It was a calculated attempt to push me out. I sat on my porch, the letters spread across the table, Daisy's head resting against my knee as the sun dropped over trimmed lawns. This was my grandfather's porch, my ramp, my van, my freedom. Every part of it was a problem solved. And now, Karen George was trying to turn me into her problem. She believed she could paper me into submission with threats. She saw a wheelchair and assumed weakness. She was wrong. What she didn't see was the engineer sitting in it. And engineers thrive on complex systems, especially broken ones. My solution, I realized, wouldn't be a patch. It would be a full dismantling of her power structure. The war had begun, though I hadn't fired a shot. All I had done was gather her ammunition. Step 1 was data. Blueprints always come before building, and Karen's behavior, that was the blueprint I needed. That's where Tom came in. 2 houses down, retired air traffic controller, garage, stacked with antennas and radios like a miniature mission control. He knew the pulse of our neighborhood better than anyone. The next morning I rolled over, Daisy trotting beside me. Tom looked up from his soldering iron, grinning over his glasses. "Hank, good to see you. What's the frequency?" "Karen." "George," I said. "Patterns, routines, habits, I need them all." He leaned back, chuckling. "Ah, Queen Karen, the scourge of Sycamore Lane. You came to the right place." He described her patrol's golf cart at 8 a.m., 1 p.m., 6 p.m., clipboard in hand. Every trash bin logged, every lawn measured, every child's toy documented. Predictability is the engineer's greatest gift. It makes systems easy to dismantle. I had a plan. Record her, catch her red-handed. I mounted a sugar cube-sized camera to the frame of my wheelchair. Wide angle, discreet, perfect. Discreet, 1 o'clock sharp. I positioned myself at the edge of my driveway, fiddling with a wheel for show. Right on cue, her golf cart rolled into view. Her eyes locked onto me, narrowed with suspicion. I tapped the button, the camera blinked alive. She rolled up, angling her golf cart across the sidewalk at the mouth of my driveway. Not just blocking, but sealing it off diagonally so there was no space left to pass. An obvious violation of the ADA. "Mr. Mercer," she said, her voice coated in fake sweetness. "We need to discuss these fines." I kept my tone level, steady. "There's nothing to discuss, Karen. The fines are groundless. The ramp is legal. My van is parked within code, and my security system is permitted." Her smile collapsed. "Rules are rules. They apply to everyone. You are not special." That was the tell I'd been waiting for, the real motive bleeding through. "It's not about being special," I said. "It's about equal access. For instance, right now you're blocking my access to the public sidewalk. Could you move your cart?" I nodded toward the blocked path. Her face flushed splotchy red. Tom was right, she couldn't stand being challenged. "I'm conducting official HOA business," she snapped. "This sidewalk is common property. I'll park here as long as necessary." A lie. The sidewalk was city-owned, maintained by public works, but she believed her own mythology. She thought she was the law. "So you're refusing to move?" I asked, making sure my camera caught her verbal yes. "I'm not moving until you pay these fines and remove that hideous ramp." She folded her arms, drunk on her tiny power trip. She thought she'd cornered me. In truth, she'd stepped neatly into the trap I'd set. I just nodded slowly. "Okay, Karen, I understand. No shouting, no arguing." I let the camera drink in her smug face, let it record the cart choking off public access. A minute of her silent glaring, and she lost interest. With a huff, she cranked the cart back to life and drove off, no doubt hunting her next target. The moment she disappeared, I stopped the recording. I had it clear audio, clear video. A civil rights violation caught in the act. Inside, I uploaded the file to my growing HOA folder. It joined the stack of fine notices and incident photos. My archive of evidence was thickening. She thought the clipboard made her strong, but I had better weapons. Data, facts, patience. The only question now, how would she escalate? Because people like Karen always escalate. It came quicker than I expected. Middle of the night. A week later, I woke at 2 a.m. not to noise, but to an explosion of light and sound. Every floodlight on my property burst to life, and a siren howled loud enough to wake the dead. Daisy pressed against my knee, trembling. The house strobed white, dark white like a heartbeat. I snapped the lamp off, kept low, and scanned the yard. Mulch scattered near the roses. A crouched shadow moved fast, careful. My hand closed on the radio. "Tom, eyes up." His drone rose, a buzzing wasp in the dark. Focus cut through adrenaline. This wasn't a malfunction. It was the tripwire. Someone had sliced the perimeter line. I wheeled to my office window overlooking the front. Red and blue lights flashed already. PD response triggered by the silent alarm built into my system. The outdoor siren was just theater, designed to rattle whoever cut the line. A young officer stepped out of the cruiser, hand near his weapon. Name tag, Ruiz. At the same time, across the street, Tom's drone camera hovered, thermal view painting the whole scene in heat and shadow. My network was growing. At the door, Officer Ruiz kept his tone measured. "Sir," dispatch said, "perimeter breach. You all right?" "I'm fine," I answered. But someone cut my alarm wire. We circled the house with flashlights. The break was obvious, pulled up and clipped clean. Not wear, not animal damage. Sharp tool cut. Wire cutters. Ruiz crouched, examined, documented photos, notes, questions. By the book, I explained. No embellishment. The fines, the harassment, the sidewalk stunt. He listened, patient. "I can't prove who tonight," he said finally. "But with this history, we've got motive. It's more than vandalism. Now it's criminal." He gave me a card, a case number. "Anything else comes up, call me direct. Fair, professional." Another piece clicking into place. When he left, silence poured back over the street. Adrenaline drained, replaced by a cold, tight anger. This was a new level. Fines were one thing, blocking access another, but creeping onto my property with cutters, trying to strip away my security. That was war. She wanted me unsafe in my own home, my sanctuary, my grandfather's house. She crossed a line no one should. In the dark living room, Daisy at my feet. I opened Tom's drone file. Thermal footage lit the screen. One figure darting from my yard, cutting across a neighbor's lot, heading down the street, toward Karen's place. Not courtroom proof, but enough confirmation for me. I logged it, synced timestamps with Ruiz's arrival. folded it into the growing fortress of records, each fact a stone in the wall. She thought she was besieging me, she was just handing me ammunition. What now? The police report turned it criminal. The wire cut proved intent. This was no bylaw spat anymore. This was targeted harassment. Grandpa's voice echoed, be smarter, not hammer force. Precision, not a weapon, a key. I dug in. 2 days straight, coffee and resolved. The latest fine notice is one for noise violation from my Seren. I just photographed, filed, ignored. My focus was elsewhere. Up in the attic, under dust, I cracked open my grandfather's boxes. Old photos, brittle deeds, survey maps, and at the bottom of a box marked Community, a thick yellow folder bound in brass. Land lease agreement. Heart racing. I flipped it open. Dated 1985. Parties George Mercer and Sycamore Lane HOA. The neighborhood, newly organized, had wanted a community space. The little utility building at the entrance, sitting on unused surplus land my grandfather had bought decades earlier, fit the bill. He leased it to them for $1 a year. Renewed ever since 30 years. Forgotten who really owned it. That building, Corinne's headquarters, her HOA throne sat on my family's land. And the lease clauses, delicious. The tenant must maintain order, must keep the peace, must obey all laws, local, state, and federal. Karen George had built her empire on a foundation my grandfather gave them, and now, without even realizing it, she'd broken the very terms that let it exist. The Americans with Disabilities Act is federal law. Targeting a disabled resident, cutting off their access, was a straight-line violation. The deliberate destruction of my property went even further. It broke the very peace clause that granted her power in the first place. Karen George, drunk on authority, had crossed into forbidden ground. She wasn't some sovereign ruler here. She was a tenant first in my grandfather's building, and now, through him, in mine. I leaned back in my chair, the brittle lease document resting in my hands. The board's entire wall had just inverted. What I thought was defense suddenly became offense. I wasn't simply a resident anymore. I was the landlord. I held the master key. Daisy wandered in, her head finding my lap, as if she sensed the air had shifted. I stroked her fur, a slow grin carving its way across my face. A hidden weakness buried in the foundation. Karen George had no clue it even existed. I called Grandpa, explained. He was quiet, then chuckled low. Well, I'll be darned. I set that up years ago, then forgot about it, just neighborly, you know. Well, Grandpa, I said, staring down at the lease, your little gesture just became the biggest lever anyone's ever seen. He laughed. Again, give her hell, son. Just don't lose your head doing it. The plan crystallized instantly. A dual strike, one legal, one contractual, precise, by the book. Devastating. I needed the right lawyer, not a brawler, but a scalpel. Someone fluent in disability law and property law both. After a short hunt I found him. His name was Mark, a military vet turned attorney. I laid it out over the phone. The fines, the vandalism, the cut wires, and the deed itself. Silence followed, then for words. Oh, this is beautiful. He was the one. Next day, I spread my evidence across his conference table: photos, violation letters, video of the blocked sidewalk, Officer Ruiz's report, and the crown jewel. The lease. Mark studied it all, slow and precise. He replayed the video twice, read the lease 3 times. Finally, he looked up, a hard smile set. Mr. Mercer, he said, this isn't just petty harassment. It's textbook housing discrimination. The ramp and van fines are direct fair housing and ADA violations. Blocking the sidewalk is another. The vandalism gives us grounds for a restraining order, and this. He tapped the lease. This is the hammer. His plan mirrored mine, sharpened by his hand. First, a federal offensive, a thick ADA complaint filed with the DOJ Civil Rights Division. Evidence bound tight, every violation detailed. It would trigger an investigation Karen couldn't sidestep. That was the long pressure. Second, the landlord strike. Mark drafted a curaquit notice, formally addressed to the Sycamore Lane HOA. It spelled out their lease violations, the destruction, the failure to keep the peace, the ADA breaches, 30 days to cure, drop the fines, issue a formal apology, remove Karen George as president, fail, and the lease ended. They'd be evicted from the property. My property. The complaint went certified mail to the DOJ, the notice served in person, official, undeniable. 2 days later, during the monthly HOA meeting inside my community center, the process server walked up to the podium, handed Karen the papers, and said flatly, "You've been served," then walked out. Tom told me that silence was absolute. Karen's face turned from confusion to shock to rage as she scanned the first page. The jaws of the trap had closed. For the first time, calm settled over me. I had done the work, gathered the records, built the file, dragged her shadow war into daylight. All I had to do now was wait. I knew her well enough. Apology wasn't in her nature, nor resignation. She would sneer, ignore, and dare me to push. That arrogance was her fatal flaw. 30 days ticked down. No apology, no withdrawal of fines, no resignation. On the 31st, Mark filed the eviction. The summons was served. A court date landed 3 weeks away. The immovable object was about to meet the law. The game had reached its final stage. The morning of the court hearing was gray and heavy, the sky pressing down like a lid. It felt right. I met Mark outside the courthouse. I wore a suit, something that still felt strange on me. Daisy was beside me in her service vest, head high, every bit the professional partner. She lay quietly at my feet once inside, her calm presence steadying me in the sterile, echoing halls. Mark looked sharp, his binder organized into neat tabbed sections. Every fact, every date, every image airtight. Karen was already there. She had a young lawyer with her, a man who looked like he'd stepped out of law school yesterday. She gave me a look that could have cut steel. She still thought it was a brawl she could win through stubbornness. She had no idea the ground under her throne had already been pulled away. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. The judge, a woman with keen eyes and no patience for wasted time, opened the session with clipped efficiency. She asked for arguments. Karen's lawyer stood. First, his voice was thin, uncertain. He spoke of rules, of regulations, of how my ramp broke the neighborhood's harmony. He called the fines routine, tried to make me into the problem neighbor. The lesser core weapon he brushed aside like an outdated relic. It was weak. He had come to argue about paint. Then markrose.com/steady. He didn't waste words. Your Honor, this case is not about aesthetics. It is about contract. Mr. Mercer is the legal owner of 1 Sycamore Lane. The defendant, the HOA, has occupied the property under a lease for more than 30 years. He placed the deed and the lease in front of the judge. She read silently, her eyes narrowing as the room held its breath. Finally, she looked up. Counsel, she said, fixing Karen with her stare. 2 questions. 1. Is this your signature on the renewal? Karen's lips moved once before she admitted yes. 2. Is that sidewalk public, as the city map indicates? Karen glanced at her lawyer. Yes. The judge nodded once. Then stop talking about paint. This is contract and access. The words landed like hammers. Mark tapped a tab marked writ and began. The lease requires peaceable conduct. Yet, the HOA, under President Karen George, harassed my client and destroyed his property. He handed over Officer Ruiz's report. The lease requires compliance with federal law. Yet the HOA violated the Americans with Disabilities Act, fining my client for his wheelchair ramp and blocking a public sidewalk. He played the footage from my chair camera, Karen smugly standing in my way. The silence in the room was absolute. Mark closed simply. We served notice to cure or quit. They ignored it. The lease is broken. The rules require the keys be returned to the owner. We request the writ of possession. He sat 10 minutes, no wasted motion. The judge turned to the defense response. The young lawyer stumbled, words falling apart. He had nothing. The judge exhaled, sharp and tired. The evidence is clear. The lease is binding. The tenant failed to abide by its terms. The landlord has lawfully terminated tenancy. She stamped the document with a sound that cracked through the air. Karen flinched. My hands trembled once on the rims of my chair, then steadied. Daisy flicked an ear. Mark slid me the pen like it was a medal. I signed. The writ is granted. The judge said, the defendants have 48 hours to vacate. The sheriff will enforce. Just like that, it was over. Karen sat frozen, disbelief on her face. She had believed herself untouchable. She had never once questioned if the throne she claimed was hers at all. As I wheeled out, I caught her eyes. The rage was still there, but now layered with something harder, humiliation. And humiliation in a tyrant is fuel for dangerous things. We had the ruling, the proof on paper. But I knew the next 48 hours would not be simple. The fight for the building itself was only beginning. The HOA ignored the order just as they had ignored every notice before. They acted as though nothing had happened to them. It was still their castle. But a writ is not paper. It is the weight of the law, carried by deputies with badges. If this was to be settled, it had to be done where no one could deny it. Public, final. The chance came fast. The annual Sycamore Lane Summer Festival. Karen's pride and crown jewel. Food trucks, games, a bouncy castle, music, neighbors everywhere. It was her kingdom on parade. And we would take it back in front of them all. Mark arranged with the sheriff's office. Service would be delivered in the middle of the event. The day came bright and loud. Children laughed, parents chatted, music spilled across the street. Karen moved at the center, clipboard in hand, glowing in her authority. She thought the storm had passed. She thought she had won. At exactly 1 p.m., I wheeled forward down the main street, Mark at my side. Behind us, 2 deputies walked steady and silent, uniforms pressed, faces unreadable. Their presence shifted the air. A black banner over the community center read HOA headquarters. The music faltered. The blue lights washed across the festival. Conversation stilled. Writ of possession, the deputy said flatly, tapping his folder. And just like that, the crowd realized the Queen's stage was about to collapse. Tom whispered into his handheld, and in this corner, the undefeated lease. A kid nearby snorted. Even the ice cream guy froze mid-scoop. The deputy's brow lifted a hint of a smile ghosting across his face before he set it back to stone. The atmosphere shifted, the crowd picking up on it. Karen spotted us, her smile froze, then curdled. She stormed forward, heels cutting into the grass, her path carrying her straight into the deputies. "What is the meaning of this?" she barked, hand shooting toward my head. The lead deputy slid between us in one practiced step. "Ma'am, don't." Her palm hung in the air, trembling, then dropped. Her voice rose sharp enough for everyone around to hear. "You are not welcome here, Hank. You're trespassing on HOA property." Before I could speak, the deputy stepped forward. Big, calm, seasoned. His voice was polite, but iron-edged. "Ma'am, we're not here for him. We're here for the property. I have a writ of possession issued by the Superior Court. This building, the land it sits in, are to be returned to the legal owner, Mr. Hank Mercer. Everyone must vacate immediately." He handed her the stamped document. Karen stared at it, then at me, then back again. The crowd was utterly still, every eye watching. "This was better than any festival attraction. This is absurd," she sputtered. "This is our community center. We've been here for 30 years. The deputy didn't blink. "You can take that up with the judge. My job today is to enforce this order. Please gather your belongings and leave the building." The second deputy was already at the door, bolt cutters in hand. A locksmith waited in a van down the block. Karen's face twisted with fury as the humiliation unfolded. She screamed accusations, liar, thief, thug, at me, at the deputies, but no one was listening. The neighbors weren't looking at me anymore. They were staring at her, a woman raging at law enforcement while the law stood firmly on my side. Her power evaporated in real time. Parents pulled their kids from the bouncy castle. The music choked off. The festival was done. The deputies were efficient. In under half an hour, the building was cleared. HOA property locked down. Yellow tape stretched across both entrances, the writ posted for all to see. The lead deputy placed a new set of keys in my hand. "It's yours, Mr. Mercer," he said, giving me a nod. I sat in my chair holding the keys to the building that had caused so much grief. Around us, the party lay in ruins. Karen stood pale and shaking on the lawn, her cronies clustered tight, her authority shattered. But in her eyes, burning hotter than ever, was hatred. And hatred like that doesn't vanish. I knew she wasn't finished. Humiliation like this doesn't make tyrants back down, it drives them off a cliff. I was right. Within days, Karen's desperation boiled over. She drafted a petition, waving it around as if it were holy scripture. The notary stamp at the bottom looked official until the clerk confirmed the notary was out of state, her seal locked in a vault. The stamp was a forgery, a felony. The evidence was laughable. Lies about loud parties. I don't host parties. Unregistered vehicles. My van's fully legal. Threatening behavior. I'd never raised my voice to her. The petition's goal, to seize the community center back from me, citing a phantom bylaw about safety. But Karen didn't stop there. She stalked me. When I went for mail, her golf cart appeared. When I rolled down the sidewalk with Daisy, she trailed me, never close enough to confront, always near enough to menace. It was textbook intimidation. But I wasn't rattled. My wheelchair camera rolled every time I left the house. Tom's long-range surveillance lens covered the street. Between us, we had hours of footage of her watching, following, creeping, documented harassment. The petition, though, that was her fatal flaw. Documents can be verified. Mark, my lawyer, didn't even need 5 minutes. "That notary stamp," he said, pointing. "Let's check." The clerk confirmed it. Fake. Then came the signatures. Out of 50, nearly half were flagged. Handwriting didn't match. Some names didn't belong. Mark called 3 random neighbors. One woman was furious Karen tricked her into signing what she thought was a get well card. Another said Karen told him it was a petition for a streetlight. The third, he flat out refused to sign anything. Yet his name appeared anyway. Roared forgery, deception. Asterisk, asterisk. Mark gathered sworn affidavits, official statements from the clerk, the forged notary record, and all the video footage. The case against Karen wasn't civil anymore, it was criminal. Forgery, fraud, harassment, stalking. She had crossed every line and she had done it to herself. We now had a choice. Hand it to the DA and let her face charges, or use it as the final lever to topple the HOA for good. I heard my grandfather's words again. Be smarter. Sending Karen to jail would feel good, but it wouldn't fix the rot. The HOA was the problem, the system that let her play queen with unchecked power. Her petition, her ultimate act of arrogance, had become the weapon we needed. The courtroom had been the fight. The lockout had been the blow. The meeting would be the end. Karen hadn't just come after me, she'd betrayed the community itself. That was unforgivable. Mark, Tom and I dug into the HOA bylaws, the same binder Karen once weaponized, and deep inside, we found the clause we needed. It was buried in the bylaws, a dissolution clause. The association could be dismantled outright. If the board was recalled by majority vote, half the homeowners present +1, a built-in kill switch, democratic and final, placed there by the original founders and forgotten by nearly everyone. That was the play. We invoked the clause and scheduled an emergency meeting. The notices were official, clear and unavoidable. The purpose, a vote to recall the current board and dissolve the Sycamore Lane HOA. The venue was neutral ground, a library conference room, not the community center Karen claimed as her throne. For a week, Tom and I canvassed door to door. No insults, no shouting, just facts. We carried affidavits from neighbors whose signatures had been forged. The clerk's statement exposing the fake notary stamp, the lease agreement itself. The choice was simple: remain under a fraudulent regime or dissolve it and return to normal. City governance. The night of the meeting, the library was packed, more homeowners than I'd ever seen together. The tension was thick, heavy with betrayal. Karen arrived flanked by her last two loyalists, both pale and nervous. She tried to seize control, barking like it was another rigged session. But the room wasn't hers anymore. A neighbor I barely knew stood up and nominated me to chair. It was seconded and passed instantly. Karen's authority evaporated in a single vote. I wheeled forward, calm, steady. On the projector I laid out the evidence piece by piece: the forged petition, the clerk's findings, the affidavits, the video of Karen stalking me. I framed it not as my personal war, but as crimes against the community itself. This isn't about ramps or van perking, I said. It isn't about paint colors or kids playing ball. This is about trust. The person we gave authority lied, forged, and harassed instead of leading. The system failed. Tonight, we can fix it. The power is ours. Then I opened the floor. For the first time, people spoke freely. Story after story poured out. Holiday decorations fined, kids chased off the street, gardens deemed unacceptable. It grew from a trickle into a torrent. The anger in the room was undeniable. Karen tried to claw back control, shouting, calling everyone liars, branding me a monster. But her words drowned under the weight of proof and testimony. The neighbors she'd ruled by fear no longer listened. I called the question, the motion: recall the board and dissolve the HOA. All in favor, raise your hand. For a heartbeat, silence, then one hand lifted, then another, then dozens. A forest of arms rose. Tom and another neighbor tallied carefully. When the numbers were clear, Tom grinned wide. The motion passes, he announced. Applause erupted, a wave of relief breaking over the room. Karen froze, her face drained. Everything, her power, her position, her reputation was gone. She stormed out, her lackeys trailing behind. It was over. By her own bylaws, her empire had fallen. Neighbors shook my hand, grateful. We weren't subjects anymore. We were just neighbors. On the way home, I rolled past the taped-off community center. The deputy outside gave me a nod. The night air felt lighter, freer, my first real breath in months. But I wondered what comes the day after a revolution. The answer was quiet. That's what struck me first. The next morning, peace settled over the street. No patrols, no nasty notes. By week's end, the HOA signs at the entrance were gone, hauled off by laughing neighbors with a pickup. People exhaled. Kids left bikes on lawns. Smiles returned. It felt like a neighborhood again. Our first collective project was fixing sidewalks. No bureaucracy, no delays, just volunteers forming a simple committee, getting quotes, and using the leftover HOA funds now in a library-managed trust. Within a month, the cracked concrete was repaired and ADA-compliant curb cuts installed. My ramp stayed, no longer a battle flag, just part of the house. Normal, unremarkable. The community center transformed. It became what it was meant to be, a hub. We started a tool-lending library in the back room. The main hall hosted yoga, playgroups, potlucks. One rule posted on the wall: be respectful, clean up, welcome everyone. That was all we needed. As for Karen, justice found her. The district attorney, armed with the clerk's report and Mark's filings, pressed charges for forgery and fraud. She pled out probation, fines, and written apologies to those she wronged. Mine came bitter and hollow, but it was proof on paper. Not long after, a for sale sign appeared. She couldn't survive as just another neighbor. She left now. Some afternoons I roll with Daisy, exchanging waves with neighbors. Tom tinkers in his garage, antenna parts scattered. Officer Ruiz passes by, nodding, remarking that rookies study our case to learn how to handle harassment. Life is quiet again. Grandpa visited recently. We watched the sun dip low. You did good, Hank, he said. You didn't just fight for yourself. You fought for the street. He was right. It started as a ramp and a house. It became about neighbors, fairness, and building something better. I rolled past the community center now, alive with kids and potlucks. My ramp still stands. The sidewalks, our smooth. The street is calm. I hold the keys, but it belongs to everyone. That's enough.